Hello everyone, this is Manohar Reddy, Department of Cybersecurity, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. Today in this session, I am going to explain you about Internet Key Exchange in IP security. So Internet Key Exchange is one type of service in IP security services. So generally, the IP security services, IP secure equals to authentication header plus encapsulating security payload plus Internet Key Exchange. So with the combination of these three, the IP secure is strongly says that it provides a security. IP secure is a strongly says that it provides security. With the help of this authentication header, encapsulating security payload, as well as Internet Key Exchange. So which is used for exchanging of the keys, generating of the keys, and key management purpose. And encapsulating security payload is for authentication purpose, and authentication header is for digital certification purpose. So these two are authentication and confidentiality purpose with the help of key management. So here the Internet Key Exchange. So how Internet Key Exchange will helps to provide a security in the IP security. So the key management, so Internet Key Exchange is a key management portion of IP secure, involves the determination and distribution of secret keys. So it is used to involve the determination and distribution of secret keys. A typical requirement is 4 keys for communication between two applications. 4 keys are used to communicate between two applications. So transmit and receive pairs for both integrity as well as confidentiality. So this transmit and receive pairs, the transmission pair as well as receiver pair, are both for providing the service as integrity purpose as well as confidentiality purpose. So the IP secure architecture document mandates supports for two types of key management. So one is manual mechanism and the second one is automated mechanism. So in this Internet Key Exchange, this portion involves to distribution or determination of the secret keys. So it provides the concept of key management actually. But it provides the key management in 2 ways. One is a manual way and the second one is automated way. The manual, system administrator manually configures each system with its own keys and with the keys of other communicating system. So he is used to generate the same keys for same system, and he is used to generate the same keys for another systems. So generating keys for same systems as well as generating keys for other systems as well as. So that is the manual way, and this is a practical for small, relatively static environment. So this is practical for small or static environments. And second one is automated way. So an automated system enables the on-demand creation of keys for security associations. So SCA stands for security associations and facilitates the use of keys in large distributed system with an evolving configuration. So an IKE message consists of an IKE header followed by one or more payloads. So which contains IKE header as well as one or more payloads. All of this is carried in a transport protocol. The specification dictates that the implementations must support the use of UDP also. So here the IKE header contains 0 to 32 fields. That means 1 to 32 fields. 32 bit field which contains the initiator's security parameters index, responder's security parameters index, that means transmitter, that means indirectly you can say that transmitter and receiver, transmitter and receivers. So transmitter index as well as receiver index. And with the help of that next payload field and the major version of the field, minimum version of the field of the key, major version of the key, minimum version of the key. So exchange type of the key. So the key type, key exchange type, whether it is public key exchange or private key exchange type, and the flags, and the message ID, and the message length. So these are all the fields contains in the IKE header format. IKE header format. So here one is what? Transmitter parameter index, a transmitter index as well as receiver index. Next payload, major version of the key, minimum version of the key, exchange type of the key, and the flags, message ID, and message length. So these are all the fields in the IKE header format. IKE header format. So IKE stands for what? Internet Key Exchange. So Internet Key Exchange, the fields contain all this. Along with this, the generic payload, so which contains IKE header followed by one or more payloads. So the payload field contains what? It indicates that next payload, and C checksum, and reserved field, and a payload length field. So this is the generic payload header field. So one is next payload, and checksum, and reserved, and payload length field. This is also 32-bit field. 32-bit field. This is also 32-bit field. So this is the IKE header format, and this is the payload header format. Payload header format. So payload contains the next payload. What is the next payload? And what is the checksum? What is the reserved field? What is the payload length field? So here the field. So initiator SPI, that means the transmitter index. So it is a value chosen by the initiator, that is nothing but transmitter. The value chosen by the transmitter to identify a unique IKE, unique key for the security association. Unique IKE security association. And for the responsive or receiver side, for the responsive or receiver, a value chosen by the responder, to identify a unique IKE SCA. So value chosen by the responder to identify a unique IKE SCA. The next payload 8 bits field, it indicates the type of the first payload. It indicates the type of the first payload in the message. And payloads are discussed in the next subsections. So major version of the field, it indicates the major version of IKE use. And the minimum version or minor version indicates that it is also 4 bits field. It indicates minor version in use. And exchange type. So how many bits are going to be exchanged? It is an 8-bit field. It indicates that type of exchange. These are discussed later in this section. So flags 8 bits field. It indicates the specific options set for this IKE exchange. Sets for IKE exchange. So 3 bits are defined so far. The initiator bit indicates that whether this packet is sent by the SCA initiator or not. So the initiator bit indicates that what? Whether the packet is sent by the SCA initiator or not. That means a related transmitter or not. The version bit indicates whether the transmitter is capable of using a higher major version number than the one currently indicated. So which is the current version, or which is the minor version, which is the major version? The version bit indicates that. And the response bit indicates whether this is a response to message contains the same message ID or not. So version bit indicates that it is either major version or minor version. And response bit indicates that if the response message is received with the same message ID or not, which tells that like. So message ID, it is a 32-bit field. It is used to control retransmission of lost packets and matching of requests and response. and length 32 bits field. It is a length of total message. Header plus all payloads in octets. Header plus all payloads in octets. So IKE payload types. So what are the different payload types? So we already said that IKE header is one, and IKE header payload. IKE header is one, IKE header payload. So what are the different payload types actually? So all IKE payloads begin with the same generic payload header. Same generic payload header. The payload types defined for IKE are the listed here. IKE are the listed here. The list of the fields or parameters that are part of each payload. So what are those payload types? So first one is what? Security association. So it provides the security concepts, security parameters between those two. And the parameters are nothing but proposals. So key exchange. So key exchange data are the proposals. So DH group and exchange data, key exchange data are the parameters. And identification. So how it identified them, whether it is a ID type as well as ID data. And the certification. So certificate is one type of payload which contains the parameters certification encoding as well as certificate data. Certification encoding as well as certificate data. And next, certificate request. So certificate encoding, certification authority are the parameters. The next, authentication. So authentication method as well as authentication data. And nonce. So nonce data. Notify. So protocol ID, security parameter index size, and it notify message type. So SPA as well as notification data. And a delete type. So protocol ID, SPI size, that is nothing but a security parameters index size, as well as space one or more. Next, vendor ID. It is also one type of payload. And vendor ID. And traffic selector. So number of traffic selectors, TS. And encrypted. So IV. Encrypted IKE payloads. Padding, pad length, ICV. And configuration. So configuration type, configuration attributes. Extensible authentication protocol, EAP message. Extensible authentication protocol message. So these are all the parameters that indicates that each and every payload is which type. So these are all the different types of payloads are having in the IKE payload types. Security association, key exchange. So security association is used for providing security between two. Key exchange mechanism used to exchanging the keys for encryption and decryption purpose. Identification. So which type of key are using, whether it is public key or private key. And certificate request from digital signature. And authentication. The user and sender and receiver are authenticated or not. And no one's data. So whether the data is authenticated or not. And notify. The protocol, alert protocol or handshake protocol identifies. And delete the data, deletes the data. So like the way we are having all the different types of payloads in the IKE service. So the security service payload, so which is used to begin the establishment of ISA. The payload has a complex or hierarchical structure, and payload may contain multiple proposals as well. And each proposal, so here security association payload contains the complex structure, and the payload contain multiple proposals, and each proposal may contain multiple protocols, and each protocol contains multiple transforms, and each transform contains multiple attributes. So like the way the security association implements that for each and every level of hierarchy. And the key exchange payload, the field contains the data required to generate a session key and is dependent on the key exchange algorithm used. It is used to data required, it is used to generate a session key, and it is dependent on the key exchange algorithm used. And key exchange techniques including Oakley, Diffie-Hellman and the RSA based key exchange are used by the PGP mechanism. PGP mechanism. That is nothing but PGP, pretty good pretty good privacy service mechanism. And the identification payload is used to determine the identity of communicating peers, communicating systems, and may be used for determining authenticity of information. Authenticity of information. And typically, the ID data field will contain an IPv4 or IPv6 header. And the certificate payload. The certificate payload transfers a public key certificate. Public key certificate. The certificate encoding field indicates the type of certificate or certificate related information. Type of certificate or certificate related information. Authentication payload, so which contains data used for message authentication purpose. So message authentication purpose, we are generating message authentication code also. Message authentication codes also. The authentication method types so far defined are RSA digital signature, shared key message, integrated code, and digital signature. So digital signature mechanism, RSA digital mechanism, shared key message mechanism. These are all some message authentication process. Message authentication process. And non-payload contains random data used to guarantee liveness during exchange and to protect against reply attacks. So that is one payload, optional payload, so which is used for exchanging or protection against reply attacks. And notify payload, it contains either error or status information associated with SCA or this SCA negotiation. And the delete payload, it indicates one or more SCAs that the sender has deleted from its database and that therefore are no longer valid. So if the delete payload which has been deleted, the data which has been spent over no longer period. The vendor ID payload. Vendor ID payload contains a vendor defined constant, allows a vendor to experiment with the new features while maintaining backward compatibility. And the traffic selector payload, it allows peers to identify packet flows for processing by IP secure services. And the encrypted payload contains other payloads in encrypted form. So the encrypted payload contains other payloads like delete payload, notify payload, non-payload, vendor ID payload. So all these other payloads in encrypted form. The configuration payload is used to exchange configuration information between IKE pair based on the system configurations. Based on the system configurations are key management configuration. And the extensible authentication protocol EAP. Allows IKE SCS to be authenticated using EAP. And these are all the internet key exchange payload types. So which is having both security associations, exchange payload, identification payload, certificate payload, authentication payload, and non-payload, notify payload, delete payload, vendor ID payload, traffic selector payload, encrypted payload, configuration payload, and extensible authentication protocol EAP payload. So these are all the payload types that are having in the internet key exchange mechanism. So once again we'll revise this topic. So what are the topics we discussed in this internet key exchange mechanism? So the first one is what is meant by internet key exchange. So there are different ways to generating keys actually. So public keys or private keys or anyway all the keys are generating in both manual way as well as automated way. The key management portion of IP secure involves the determination and the distribution of secret keys. So secret keys are generated. That is nothing but session management. Also we can say that. Session management. So do in manual way as well as automated way. do in manual way as well as automated way. So manual way, the person or system administrator configure the each and every system is its own keys as well as the keys with other communicating systems. But in automated way, on demand creation, the keys are generated. On demand creation, the keys are generated. So the IKE message format contains what? Both IKE header as well as payload field. IKE header field and payload field. So the IKE header field contains what? The first one is what? Security parameter index for both transmitter as well as receiver. So initiator's security parameter index, responder's security parameter index. And remaining all the fields are next payload field, major version field, minor version field, exchange type field, flags, message ID, length field. So these are all IKE header fields. But in the payload field, generic payload header field contains next payload, checksum C, reserved payload, and payload length. These are all different fields in the payload header. So one is IKE header fields and the second one is generic payload header fields. So in the payload header, in the IKE header fields contains different fields like initiator SPI, responder SPI, that is nothing but security parameter index, next payload, major version of the payload, minor version of the payload, exchange type of the keys, flags, version bit as well as response bits. So these are all the fields that are indicating that internet key exchange header contains. So initiator header field contains what? It identifies unique IKE for the security association. Responder field contains what? It identifies unique identify SKE. Next payload field, it contains first payload in the message, major version of the field and minor version of the field, and the exchange type of the exchange field. So which type it is going to be exchanged, and the flags. So these are all the fields. Version bit indicates that whether it is minor version or major version, and response bit indicates that the response of the message that received by the receiver or not. And message ID bits, so used to control risk transmission of lost packets. So that indicates the status of the messages, whether it is lost or not, and length of the field. So what are the different types of IKE payload types? So all these IKE payload types contains different parameters. So security association, key exchange, identification, certificate request, authentication, known, that is nothing but none, notify, delete, vendor ID, traffic selector, encrypted, configuration, extensible authentication protocol. So each and every protocol, each and every payload type having some importance. So security association field which contain establishment of security association from attributes level to hierarchical structure level. Attribute level to hierarchical structure level. Next, key exchange payload indicates that generation of the session keys. Identification payload contains, it shows that ID data field or not. Certificate payload transfers public key certificates or certificate encoding. Field indicates that type of certificate and certificate related information. So certificate payload contains which type of certificate it is provided and the certificate related information. And authentication payload contains which types, the method, authentication method types are having like RSA digital signature, shared key, integrate code, digital signature processes. And next, non-payload, so which is used to give the guarantee for the exchange of the keys. And notify payload, which notifies that status of the information with SA or SC negotiation. And delete payload deletes the data which is having a longer time. And vendor ID payload Vendor ID payload is having a new features while maintaining backward compatibility. And traffic selector payload is having identity of the packet flows processing by IP security services. Encrypted payload contains other payloads in encrypted form. Other payloads in encrypted form. And the configuration payload is used to exchange configuration of information between IKE pairs. IKE pairs. And extensible authentication protocol. So EAP, extensible authentication protocol payload allows all IKE SCS to be authenticated using EAP. Authenticated using EAP. So this is all about Internet Key Exchange Protocol. So which is also a part of Internet Protocol Service, Internet Protocol Security Service. So this is about Internet Key Exchange. So which is having both Internet Key Exchange header as well as Internet Key payload and payload types as well as. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.